Chris, it's GamePro. This is Far Cry 2. We're talking to Clint Hawking, creative director. So can you give us a short overview of the game? I know most people are familiar with the first one. I was a huge fan of the first one. Can you tell us what it's all about?
Yeah, so Far Cry 2, we really wanted to recapture what was important about the first Far Cry on PC, just taking players into a beautiful, exotic world that they'd never seen before. The problem with going back to a tropical island is you see tropical islands in other games now all the time. You go there every Thursday night on Lost. We needed to go somewhere where you've never been, somewhere that really opens your eyes and recaptures that magic from the original game. We chose to send the player to Africa because it's, a place that the player's never been. It's a place where he can see things he never thought he would see in a game before. And just as the game is sort of open, 50 square kilometers of open Africa where you can go what you want and do what you want, the story's also open. You have only one mission in the game, and that's to hunt down and kill the Jackal, who's an arms dealer selling guns to both sides in this sort of factional conflict. How you go about that, the characters that are involved in that story, it's all dynamic and it's all configuring itself based on the actions that the player takes in the game.
So obviously, if you're familiar with the first game, it's a large open world, and you just touched on it. How big is this game world that we're talking about?
The game world is 50 square kilometers of fully open terrain. You can go anywhere you want at any time. There's no loading. There's no levels. It's an open world like you would see in GTA or any other open world game.
How big of a step up would you say this is since the first one, graphically, in terms of size and scope, weapons? Can you just put it in a nutshell?
I would say it's a 4-year step up. I mean, that's the point. We needed to recapture the same technological wonder that empowered the first Far Cry to create that sense of awe, and we needed to do it 4 years later. So we needed to rebuild the engine from scratch. We needed to make everything a lot more open, a lot more free, a lot tighter for players so they can really appreciate that freedom and really use it to their advantage, as well as give them a lot more options, many, many more weapons, all kinds of vehicles, really a lot of freedom for the player.
Africa's it's a setting that we don't see in a lot of games. Do you think that's something that really is going to make this game unique?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we were going for, was that feeling of going somewhere that is real, it's a real place, but you never think you're actually going to get to go there in real life, and when you see it, you go, wow, that's incredible. And that's what the first Far Cry did for all of us, and that's why we wanted to recapture that magic. We've shown a lot of Savannah, and probably a lot of players have already seen some Savannah shots from the game, but this was our first attempt at really showing our jungle and showing this idea of a giant open world that also has sort of dense Central African jungle in it. You can see all the way up on top of those mountains. You can see way many kilometers off into the distance, and you can still get into this dense, thick foliage that's sort of a hallmark of Far Cry. The jungle eventually gives way to woodland, and the woodland gives way to grassland. The grassland ultimately out into the sort of flat, open savanna, and then into the desert if you go far enough. Instead of having an ocean boundary like was in the original Far Cry, we've ringed our entire game world with desert. So if you try to wander off, you don't find an invisible wall, you find a desert, and then you can't cross it.
So in the first game, you use the foliage, you use the brush to conceal yourself. Is that another big factor in the game this time?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to make sure the player can use the world to his advantage. So the foliage isn't just something you can hide behind. It's fully organic. It's fully destructible. In Africa, it wouldn't be Africa if you didn't have a grass fire. And we decided to make all of the grass, all of the trees, not just like damaged state, but fully procedural, fully dynamic vegetation, meaning the wind blows, all the grass and the trees sways in the wind and moves in the wind. You start a fire, it propagates in the direction of the wind. If the wind changes direction, it'll just fall back on itself and go out. So you can really use it to your advantage and play the game you want, the way you want.
Another big thing in the first Far Cry was that the AI, even for its time, but even for now, was especially smart. They would hunt you down relentless.
Yeah, we tried really hard to make them very aggressive. Because the world is open and they're able to come at you from all kinds of directions, it was really important that we make them behave a lot more like sort of like multiplayer bots than sort of like scripted AI that you would see in a linear game. And as a consequence, they can be particularly dangerous if they get behind you. There's a lot of pressure on you to keep moving in this game. Like, you're seeing me do fairly well here, but if you stop and stay still and try and lead them out to you, they'll often maneuver on you. They'll bring vehicles around on your flank. They'll advance behind vehicles, and eventually you'll run out of ammo. And then you're kind of being surrounded and flanked, and you're low on ammo, and it gets to be kind of a real nightmare if you're not pretty aggressive in how you take care of them.
Every man has his prize. Know that for you, that prize may be your soul.